And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Almost called it Monday. Happy Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever day it is. Whenever you're listening to this, wherever you are listening to it from, thank you for joining us here. We are live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, Totterson, and all of you. We are brought to you by our friends over at BIRCH Gold. Coming up in July, the so-called BRICS nations are meeting in Rio de Janeiro. This block of wannabe superpowers like China, Russia, India, and Iran, their goal with this meeting is the displacing of the U.S. dollar as the global default currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. So again, things are trending very well on a lot of fronts, but it's not like the uncertainty is over. Not like the rest of the world is like, that's great that America's getting its stuff together. That's not how this works at all. So make sure that you are prepared for any uncertainty as much as you can be by learning how to diversify your savings into gold with BIRCH Gold Group. They can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. You can claim your free info kit on gold by texting my name, Steve, to 989-898. That's text Steve to 989-898. And with an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, BIRCH Gold, you can trust them to arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset by texting Steve to 989-898. So that's what you get if you use my first name. If you use my last name, Deace, when you go to blazetv.com/Deace, you'll get a discounted subscription to Blaze TV. It'll cost you just about $8 a month for a year, or the price of one of those coffees you're buying per day, 26 cents per day, in order to get all kinds of exclusive content that we do, not just the we, but the collective we, the entire network. We do this network-wide just for you guys who make Blaze TV possible. Use the discount code DACE to get a discount on your subscription today at blazetv.com/DACE. That's blazetv.com/DACE, code DACE, for the discounted subscription to Blaze TV. Unfiltered, unafraid, and on demand. All right, no Daniel Horowitz this week. My brother from another mother has got a throat issue, so we told him to take the day off. He's the week off in our case. He's been fighting it for quite a while, so hopefully he can get that thing fixed. So you'll get Buy, Sell, or Hold the way we originally did it, concurrently, all in 1 hour, coming up in the next hour of the show. That leaves us all of this hour to discuss Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a Riyadh Redux. President Trump delivered remarks in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia yesterday, and it sounded a lot like his first Riyadh speech 8 years ago, except perhaps maybe on steroids.
I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. The gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions, and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done.
Trump landed in Qatar earlier today and signed more economic deals, including the largest order of civilian aircraft in Boeing's history.
We're extremely honored to have you here. We're very excited, very happy. It's a historic visit. And I don't know if you know that you are the first American president to officially to visit Qatar.
Back at home, let's check in on Congress. That's Representative Debbie Dingleberry, just totally passed out asleep during a committee meeting this morning. Good thing Republicans are in charge of the House. Learning English today. Today's phrase is Los Republicanos en la Cámara creemos en que cada ciudadano americano tiene el potencial de prosperar y beneficiarse de las oportunidades de trabajo.
House Republicans believe that every American has the potential to prosper and benefit from from job opportunities.
Yes, that is a real post from House Republicans yesterday, written in both English and Spanish because reasons. Other than, I guess, the Lake and Riley Act, congressional Republicans, Congress in general, hasn't passed any meaningful legislation so far this year. Quote, "We need to get Americans off the sidelines."
What happened here?
Yeah, we're all trying to find the guy who did this and give him a spanking.
It's obviously this guy, right?
Yes.
Following weeks of Democrat accusations of judicial intimidation and claims about an improper arrest, a federal grand jury determined Tuesday that there was, after all, sufficient evidence to indict Wisconsin Judge Hannah Dugan on charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstruction of the law. The indictment alleges that Dugan committed multiple affirmative acts to assist Eduardo Flores Ruiz evade arrest following his pre-trial April 18th appearance in her courtroom. CNN's Joseph Goebbels continues to make headlines this week for excerpts from his forthcoming book about the cover-up, which he participated in, of course, of Joe Biden's obvious mental acuity issues. Case in point, as Steve pointed out this morning, here's a headline from Jake Tapper's own section on CNN's website. On the eve of the Trump-Biden debate just last year, less than a year ago, right-wing media figures are desperately pushing conspiracy theories about Biden ahead of the debate. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson were reinstated by Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred on Tuesday, making both eligible for the Sports Hall of Fame after their careers were tarnished by sports gambling scandals. Manfred announced Tuesday that he is changing the league's policy on permanent ineligibility, saying bans would expire at death. Rose and Jackson were among 17 total players reinstated on Tuesday. In the oddity of all oddities, not sure if this was planned, but tonight is Pete Rose night for the Cincinnati Reds at their ballpark, and they play the Chicago White Sox. And finally, dispatches from the Hotel Calais in France, where illegal aliens are waiting to try to get into Great Britain. Here's GBN News.
Why should English people pay for you to have a house?
Maybe they give me house, they give me anything I can need, they give me.
Just give it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because people in England is perfect.
Oh, so you think we're all rich people,
Yeah.
so we can give? Okay. Yeah. Can I tell you something?
Okay.
We are not all rich people. If I said to you, look, we don't have enough houses in England, would that stop you coming to England?
Okay. Maybe I come back in my country and I change in another country after.
Yeah, maybe you try another country if you think that if you realise that we can't afford England. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Wow. I had not seen that clip. That clip reminds me of when I first moved from sports talk radio to news talk radio in June of 2006. And what was raging at that moment is George W. Bush was working as president, was working with John McCain on a massive amnesty bill. And he was really going hard after Pat Buchanan, Tom Tancredo, and others. I mean, all but calling them xenophobes, basically. And I am still a baby Christian. I'd not even been a believer for 3 years yet when I am handed arguably the most influential media platform in my entire home state. And so I'm studying all these issues and trying to learn as much as I possibly can on the fly to do a show about comprehensive topics of the day and things I was interested in and followed most of my life, but it's not the same as being prepped for doing a 3-hour sports show for 5 years, right? And so I'm still trying to figure out how do we reconcile be kind to the alien and sojourner in your land, leave your gleanings behind, for the poor and for the alien, right? Those scripture verses are in there. And I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile that with 100% assimilation is demanded in terms of God's immigration policy, within the scriptures. And I'm trying to figure all this out. I'm a baby Christian. I'm doing a lot of work, a lot of research. And so I want to hear both sides of this, particularly because, I'm my so-called evangelical president, that is as an even babier Christian, I was on my knees praying God would let him win in 2004, is saying we're all xenophobes if we, won't just let anybody move here who wants to move here, particularly if they're Hispanic. And I reached out to some of your Catholic sisters, Todd, here at locally, that did work with refugees and migrants in Iowa. Okay. And because I'm figuring, adorable naivete. I just figured, it's a Christian, ministry. I'm figuring they're going to give me the straight scoop. I'm going to, he's laughing at me. Oh. I didn't know. But believe me, I'm telling you how I found out. Okay. And, I did, they were, pleased as punch that the host of the largest radio station in the state of Iowa called them up and said, "Hey, I'm earnestly interested in why you guys do what you do, and I want to learn more. And I'm thinking through what I think of all this, given what is happening in the debate that's happening on my own side, right?" And so we have a lunch, and they bring a few migrants in. There's all kinds of folks from Catholic Charities there, and me. And I just want to listen.
I've never heard this story. I can't wait to see where this goes.
And there were some things said that I was just like, well, and I would ask questions because there seemed to be this idea, this undercurrent idea that folks were entitled to something that did not belong to them for reasons. Okay. And when I tried to ask what those reasons were, there would be deflection and a dodge. And so I left that luncheon kind of unsatisfied that I was to, emotionally, I could understand what they were doing and their point, but intellectually and lawfully, I was having a hard time, getting to where this was going. And so we made an agreement. The Iowa State Fair was coming up, and it was going to be the first time I was ever going to be out there. And they were going to put a young migrant, illegal alien, who's a student at the University of Iowa. They were going to put him on the air with me so that my audience could just hear his story. Okay. And the opening 10 minutes or so of the interview, it was very emotionally stirring for sure. Okay. But what they didn't realize is I had a few questions that I left the initial meeting with that I was not satisfied with said answers. Okay. And I'm going to get those answers now. All right. I'm going to ask some questions now. Okay. And to be honest, I just felt, I was a young guy at this time. I'm 32 years old. This guy's 21. So I just felt more comfortable potentially intellectually cornering a 21-year-old fellow young man who's relatively close to me in age than 65, 70-year-old nuns who just think they're doing the Lord's work for the indigent and the poor. You know what I'm saying? I'm not necessarily looking to, put their baby in a corner, and treat him as an intellectual punching bag. But this young man, I'm fine with it. Okay. So I asked him a question after he got done giving his emotional, heartfelt, talk. I said, "What do you say to anybody in our audience whose child could not get accepted to the University of Iowa, or they could not afford the University of Iowa, and they're a lawful native citizen of the United States?"
This part of the story I've heard. Yes.
You have heard this part of the story?
Part you've said
the prologue of how we got to this point. I never told you this before? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I literally had the Little Sisters of the Poor, or whatever the local Catholic version of that is. They literally came into the conference room at WHO. We had a lunch, and I sat down and just listened for like an hour and a half, And that's how we ended up with this interview. And I'm like, well, there's some questions I think that need to be answered here, okay? So what do you say to somebody who's in our audience and they can't afford the University of Iowa, or they could not get into the University of Iowa, and they're a lawful citizen. They're born here. They pay the full gamut of taxes. I know you pay some taxes, but they pay the full gamut of taxes everywhere they go. They are fully subsidizing the University of Iowa with said taxes, and you're sitting in a spot in that university that could have belonged to their kid. What would you say to them? And the minute that he departed from the initial emotional spiel, what came next was, "You're all colonizers. You stole the land. It doesn't belong to you either. So I don't have a problem with taking it from you, given who else you took it from, right? And let's just say there were I did make a follow-up offer to have another conversation with the fine sisters at the local Catholic Charities, but they politely demurred and passed after that, because that interview went off the rails at that point, okay? And it was very clear to me that this was emotional blackmail and emotional manipulation. And he's not grateful at all. He has no humility at all. He's not interested in assimilating whatsoever. And that typically happens when you have been given something that you are not deserving of. But from an entity that is not really empowered to give it to you, right? Because we are biblical worldview people. We believe in grace, right? So God is uniquely empowered to grant to you the mercy you do not deserve, okay? And so when the rightful authority grants something to you that you do not rightfully deserve, that should be an act that humbles you, that makes you realize amazing grace, okay? What a wretch I once was, okay? How great thou art. Pick your hymn, pick your line, right? Okay?
Exactly.
But when authority that is not rightful believes that it has the power to take from one party and give it to another for whatever its own color revolution, egalitarian rationales, Marxist sympathies, or they're just emotionally soft-headed. Whether there's a sinister motivation behind it, or I'm just this level of a bleeding heart and therefore I haven't really thought this through, whatever the result of that is, when you do that, when you take something that lawfully belongs to somebody else and you unlawfully give it to somebody that it doesn't belong to, you do not create humility in that person. You have bred an ingrate. And that interview might have gone totally differently if that young man had said at that point, I got to tell you, I think about that all the time, man. I don't know, Steve. I'm just thankful that I somehow got the hell out of Honduras and I've got an opportunity to reset, my family for generations, and I'm working my ass off here at the University of Iowa doing the best I can. I mean, I'm taking 9 credit hours a semester. I'm trying to reset an entire generation of my clan. And I have thought about that. Trust me, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know that there is a good answer. I just know we're in an imperfect world, man. And someone gave me an opportunity and I'm trying to maximize it. And I hope I didn't do it at the expense of somebody else. But my family is kind of hoping that I exploit the heck out of this so that we don't have a third generation of Central American squalor. I don't know how I would have responded to that. That would have been a different conversation. But notice that's not normally the kinds of conversations we have when the microphone is put in front of many of these people's faces. And it's because they're being given something from entities that are not entitled or empowered to give it to them. And so the gift in and of itself is unlawful. They're not the rightful authority. Somebody who has exchanged their vows as a nun for Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals or Das Kapital is not empowered, is not the rightful authority to be granting citizenship to people that are not citizens of the United States. The American people get to decide. That's government by the consent of the governed. They get to decide. And that's why, the former congressman in the 4th District, Steve King, he was in that group of immigration hawks that I mentioned with Tancredo and Pat Buchanan that George W. Bush was condemning back during that period of time. And a little known thing about Steve King, maybe you did not know, is Steve King was a regular at legal immigration and naturalization ceremonies. Steve would show up there to those on a regular basis to celebrate people that had immigrated to the country lawfully. And let me just tell you, when you put the microphone in front of their faces, you do get the kinds of statements of humility and contrition and thank you for the mercy shown upon me that I am undeserving of. That's where you do see the kinds of statements that make you proud to be an American. And yes, as that British guy said, we're not all rich here. We are all rich by the standard of the country that guy came from. Okay? And that's what makes you proud to think that there is enough left over that we can help people that are less fortunate than us. And notice also what you're not doing is you're not breeding enmity between people either when you do it this way. Have you noticed that too? All right. On one hand, you humble the person that has received the gift. On the other hand, you have given pride, not the unbiblical form of pridefulness, but the sort of the small p kind of pride of you know what? I'm proud to be able to take what I've worked so hard for and share some of it with you, because I know what you'll do with it. I know you will work just as hard with it. That's not biblical pridefulness. That's parable of the talents kind of stuff. That is, hey, we're going to give you this knowing that you're going to pay back the investment that we have made in you. You're going to pay that investment back twofold, fivefold, tenfold. There's a difference between the Afrikaners who came to this country this week waving our flags and the illegals who come across the border. And then when we play Mexico in the World Cup or any kind of soccer match, they actually wave the Mexican flag. What is the difference? When you are given something you are not lawfully entitled to have because the entity giving it to you is not empowered to do so. There's a word for that. It's called theft. When you are given something you are not entitled to have and don't deserve to have, but by an entity that is empowered to grant it to you, that is called mercy. Ill-gotten gain creates a sense of entitlement, justification. I can rationalize this. That's what you see in the video there that Aaron played at the end of his montage. Acts of mercy create humility. Thoughts on that really quick?
Yeah, I through club soccer, I met a man. I haven't seen him in several years, but he told me his naturalization story, and he said, it's been a while, but I think it was getting tested and doing it orally, and he was just rattling through the questions, and whoever was giving him the test said, okay, I think we got it. And he stopped him, and he said, no, I've been waiting for this for my whole life. I've been preparing for this. I'm going to finish this test. And he finished it and aced it. He was so proud. You weren't going to take any part of this moment away from me. And I also think I recently saw a naturalization story on Netflix. A story on Netflix about the Blitz, surviving the Blitz in England. What a stark contrast to that. They're 8 months of being bombed, but they knew and Churchill's leadership, it's important that we endure this because it sets the tone for everything else. And now their country is being invaded in an entirely different way. And this guy meekly just, please, but we aren't really rich. We have nothing to give. And because the ethos of the people is the exact opposite of the one that Churchill stirred up and rose in the face of one of the greatest evils of all time.
You know, watching that video, it is kind of funny. It's very alarming, maybe even a little bit anger invoking, but on some level, I do feel sorry for that man. He has been sold an absolutely false bill of goods about the way that the world works.
Yep.
Absolutely false. He's worse off for it. His country, his home country, is worse off for it because these lies are being spread there. And it's incredibly infantilizing and degrading to human beings to tell them that you can't live by yourself. You can't live independently. This is the quote. Let me look up the quote. This is the quote from that man. Give me house, give me anything I can need, give me. That was the quote. There is no small p pride in that.
Nope.
That is incredibly degrading to the human spirit and to human dignity. And yet this inclination has been aided and abetted and encouraged by Western elites for going on multiple generations now. That's not right. As I said yesterday, earlier this week, human beings are not inefficiencies. They're not inefficiencies. Human beings are made in the likeness of and image of God. Yet, Western elites, technocratic elites, that's all they see humans as. They're just numbers. We're not actually solving any sort of root causes here of why people are fleeing their home countries, or is that even our issue to deal with? So again, it's maddening hearing that inclination, but it's also, this guy has been sold completely wrong view of the world, and he believes that his only path in life is to just be a drain on other people. That's his only choice in life right now.
Amen. I have to tell you, and we had a lot of these conversations during Trump's first term about reassessing, particularly for you and I's generation, Todd, some of our foreign policy preconceived notions coming out of the jingoistic 80s, and seeing the world for as it is and not as we still want it to be or would prefer it to be, right?
Yeah.
And recall, if you go back and listen to our show, I think it was May of 2017, so this month, 8 years ago, that Trump gave his speech, the very first real serious foreign policy speech of his presidency, to a group of sheikhs and caliphs and Islamists in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, exactly where he was yesterday. And you guys might recall how excited I was by that speech. Yeah. I thought it was the best foreign policy speech given by a president post 9/11 I had seen. I still think that. Because I think it properly deduced the state of the world that we can realistically live in, okay? Which is, he walked into a room in a group of Islamists and said to them, basically, it's not our job here to police your culture. We got enough of our own problems. You want to economically partner with us and get even richer? We're happy to do that. You want us to leave you alone? Leave us alone? We're happy to do that, okay? If you mess with us, I'm going to drop Moabs on you like I did Syria. That's my foreign policy. That was essentially his speech. And what came out of that, in terms of setting the tone, what came out of that next was, I would argue, the greatest term of foreign policy success we have seen so far this century by a U.S. president, culminating with the Abraham Accords in 2020. This is a replay of that. But if I could pick, Steve, what's your foreign policy? What is it? I think I could finally, because I've been saying, I think you have to take this on a case-by-case basis, what's in the best interest of the United States, right? Okay? Rather than have dogmatic views all over the place. I think I could sum up my current foreign policy mission statement by exactly what the president said in the clip you showed, Aaron. It is God's job to sit in judgment. It is my job to defend the United States of America. That's my foreign policy. It is God's job to sit in judgment, and it is our job to defend our homeland and the interest therein. That's my foreign policy right there. That's it. Can't make it any plainer, any simpler than that. Okay, I don't believe I can create I don't believe I can create a right-wing utopia worldwide any more than the leftists have failed to do for a generation. I don't believe our system is as simple as we download it into a flash drive and then have Google Translate put it into Arabic and plug it into a laptop, in Mecca or in, Amman or Cairo, and instant democracy all over that. We don't even, we're not doing democracy very well here in the West. I don't know if you've paid much attention to that recently. Okay, so that's it. I think that's my foreign policy, guys. It is God's job to sit in judgment. It is our job to defend our homeland and the interests thereof. That's my foreign policy, I think.
Okay, we were talking off air yesterday. It's only Nixon can go to China kind of stuff. Trump has a way of talking with these people. They want to be in the room with him. They want to impress him. And he basically gives them the message, let's make great deals and all be groovy together, or somebody's going to get hurt, and it's probably you. That and throughout time, those who wield power justly have some version of that message. We just kind of wanted to go do our own thing and understand your way's a little different. Fine, let's get on with that. Mm-hmm. But here's the line, and let's not be stupid about it. It's way more honest than a lot the crap we've been
100%
fed
agree.
in Steve and Mai's adult lifetime.
I agree.
It is still very bizarre. I'll just tell you, my first welcoming to the big bad world was 9/11. I was 8 years old. And of course, we found out Saudi Arabia's involvement with 9/11 and Qatar to some degree. It is still bizarre to see this, yet I want to see it play out. Because it seems like in Saudi Arabia's case, there really have been some changes in that country, but it is still very, very bizarre to watch the pomp and circumstance and the warm welcome that an American president received there.
When we come back, we have to talk about what Jake Tapper is attempting. I think it is deserving of its entirely own segment.
Yep.
We will do that next. So you guys have heard us talk about Patriot Mobile for a while now. You guys know by now, they stand in the gap for our values. They take the profits that you help them earn and turn right around and prophetically reinvest them back into the same values that they share with you. Maybe you're thinking, though, man, I don't know. I'm locked into this contract. I can't get out. Well, do you know that they offer a contract buyout program for up to $500 per device? Right? And you can still get started with a free month of service with my offer code Steve. And you can still get essentially the exact same coverage networks that the communist corporations who hate you offer you as well. All right. So they have made it really excuseless to make the switch now and sign up with a company that has been really on the front lines of building the parallel economy. Our friends at Patriot Mobile. Don't wait. Do it today. Keep your phone. Upgrade your phone, switch your number, keep your number. They'll customize it for you and your family as best as they possibly can, or just your individual situation. If you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve, that's patriotmobile.com/Steve, and then use that code Steve to get up to get 1 month of service for free, and then ask them if you're locked into a deal right now. Hey, I want to know about that contract buyout program that's up to $500 per device. Do all of that with their U.S.-based customer service team, which means, unlike House Republicans in their tweets, you'll be able to understand them. All right, patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, that's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for the free month of service to get started. Okay. Again, I'm not really big into. Let's just, scroll, go to the old game of, Drudge before he just, lost his mind and became a gay sensationalist. But let's go to Drudge, was the original iteration of this. Get the headlines that are the the most fantastical of liberal media ridiculousness and just, riff off of that and call it a show, right? That was kind of the conservative, radio talk show handbook, in the 2000s and 2010s, right? Okay. And now it is, just go on X, look for clips from The View and the, handful of places, the televised insane asylum known as MSNBC, et cetera, and just grab a few of those, riff off of that. You don't have to know a cotton picking thing, done any of your own research. Just riff off of that, get the right buzzwords in, and voila, engagement farming engaged, right? I detest that stuff, okay? I detest that stuff. But every now and then, there is a level of gaslighting and credulousness that I think goes beyond just, hey guys, we're picking the most low-lying. There's literally nothing else to talk about. I say when I did sports talk radio, I'll say this on the day that Pete Rose is now going to be inducted. It's not true he's not in the Hall of Fame. I've said that for years. Everything Pete Rose did not hawk on QVC is in the Hall of Fame. They acknowledged 4192. He's all over Cooperstown. He just doesn't have a bust. Now that's going to change. Okay. He'll be formally inducted now. All right. So on the day that he's formally inducted, let me reset this, because I used to say all the time, you can always tell when your local sports talk radio host is out of things to discuss, because he'll just bring up on a random Wednesday in May, should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame, and why don't we have a college football playoff? Phones will light up. And here we are. I used to say that, right? Okay, those are kind of your go-tos. If you really aren't serious at all about being a part of any kind of movement, if you really just want to engagement farm and you're just here only for a paycheck, just go find out what the MSNBC, The View, and a handful of other places have done, and get those clips, play them, mock them, especially if you're not white or a white male. Boomer audiences really like that because they're tired of being called racist for 30 years, right? But this is not one of those times. Because what is being attempted here by Jake Tapper? Folks, this is sociopathic behavior.
Yes.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff what Tapper is doing. And I say this from experience because I grew up in this kind of an environment. This is when your old man beats you and your mom and your sibling, and then afterwards, when he feels real bad, sits down with you guys and says, "Man, I really wish you wouldn't have made me so mad that I did that." I've had those conversations. I know you're just being gaslit. Just sociopathic levels of gaslighting right to your face, as if there was anything at all that you could have possibly done to provoke the person that God installed in your home to be your protector and defender and provider, for him to instead use the instincts that God granted him, and instead of using them to do those things, turn those instincts inwardly and turn them on you. And then for him to turn around and say, "I just wish you guys wouldn't have made me so mad that I had to do that again. I feel so bad." What? That is what Jake Tapper is attempting right now. On June 25th, on the eve of last year's one and only Biden and Trump debate, one of the main headlines at CNN.com, Tapper's own network, and it was published by the, you can't make this up, unironically titled Reliable Sources section. Because Bill Clinton on abstinence apparently was already booked up. Headline, we're pushing conspiracy theories about Biden's mental state. And if you read the article, by the way, what's funny about it is, the whole thing is, by pushing these conspiracy theories about Biden's mental state, people that do what I do for a living, by doing this, we are setting the GOP up for defeat in the debate the next day. Because all Biden has to do is essentially just show up and avoid saying, "You can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat." If you can just do that, okay, then he'll have passed the debate with flying colors and the election is over. Unfortunately, when he showed up for the debate the next day, guess what he could not avoid doing? That. That's exactly what he did. All right, when he wasn't staring off into space and stuttering because he was old, feeble, and senile. And for Tapper to now write a book, and for the book to be published, which means, I know a little bit about this. I've written a few bestsellers myself. This goes through layers of edits.
Yeah, it wasn't just a tweet. People got
Correct.
together in a room.
Correct. He's even got another journalist, as you like to say, co-author. Okay. I mean, folks, this is demonic levels of gaslighting. To claim we were hoodwinked. We had no idea. When him and his own network condemned those of us who pointed this out for years prior to that fateful June debate of a year ago. I don't even know what my analysis is. I just thought we had to give this a special mention. Because here's the thing, too. In some respects, I find this actually worse than what Fauci did. Because the more and more I researched and learned, I understood why Fauci did what he did. His hands on the murder weapon. And
so you're saying in that case, he had to have a cover-up to the crime. Jake doesn't have to do that.
He doesn't have to do this. Could just move on, do what they normally do, act like this stuff would never happen, we never saw it with our own eyes, and just move on and pretend to be credible again. That's why I compared this to when Dave used to sit us down and say, "I wish you guys would not have made me so mad that I acted like that." The need to retcon yourself, to pass on your guilt to something else and somebody else, rather than accept responsibility for your own actions, at the level of what is being attempted right now, is sociopathic.
Hallmarks of sociopathy. Lack of accountability.
Yes.
And manipulation.
Yes. That's what's going on here, man. Not even on steroids. I'm talking meth, right? And I'm talking the kind of meth that you get like straight out of somebody's, bleach collection in rural, Missouri. We've never seen anything like what Tapper is attempting. And I say this as someone who was on the front lines of daily debunking the most sociopathic gaslighting story of the era, the scamdemic. But the singular ability to do this, and this is even more shameless than the stuff you saw from Fauci. Because again, he's trying to cover his tracks. Jake Tapper doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to do it at all. So you can only come to the conclusion, Todd, that he wants to.
Yeah, I've been talking about him for a lot of years, and thank you, Aaron, for your Goebbels references. That makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. But how many years have I been saying journalism is magical and not at all broken? Well, this is why. Mm-hmm. And this is the crescendo of that. Because as long as there's no accountability within these newsrooms, and they keep enjoying the smell of their own farts, and that goes on and on and on and on. What happens is that journalism is magical and not at all broken becomes another phrase I've coined, but that's just within the last few years. And that's what Steve is talking about. This is why Jake is doing it. He doesn't have to, but why? Because the lie is the point. It is ultimately, he craves it. He fetishizes over it. He's addicted to it. And two words, magic, used in journalism is magical and the magical power of vaccines. Steve pointed, this is nothing short of demonic. That's not rhetorical flourish. It's absolutely right. Nothing else explains this. In the face of things that you don't have to do, why you not only double down on them and punish others aggressively for not doing it. Mm-hmm. Because it fills you with the same kind of level of glee that Steve laid out in Nefarious Plot, and that's in the movie, and at the altar when the sacrifice of the babies. That's what's going on inside Jake Tapper. Tell me I'm wrong.
I often say journalists wake up in the morning, they go to their bathroom, look at themselves in the mirror and say, "You are a Navy SEAL." That's just the height of id. It's just the height of arrogance. It's the height of a lack of self-awareness. But they really think that about themselves. They really think that they are the watchman on the wall. They really think that they are just as dangerous as a Navy SEAL. They really think that about themselves. And Jake Tapper is maybe their leader. When in reality, in a functioning fourth estate, in a society where journalism, where media is actually doing what its stated purpose is, anybody with an R, a D, or an I after their name should hate your guts as a journalist, or at the very least, get the butterflies or nerves when you come knocking. Is that true of most journalists on TV, like Jake Tapper? No, there's an entire cadre of people who love them to death, even if they act like they don't. That's not journalism. That's activism. Because fundamentally what these people are just activists. And that's not breaking news here at 12:49 p.m. on Blaze TV. But they are just activists, but are very, very self-deluded people at their core.
Worse, they have audiences that want to be self-deluded as well. That want to be deluged in self-delusion. Mm-hmm. They desire it. And I just don't know. I cannot think of a historic precedent. And I say this acknowledging our own country has defied I mean, it's what there's a reason the great Cleon Skousen referred to it as the 5,000-year leap. Our country in and of itself is a defiance of human and historic precedent, okay? But I know of no other human civilization that was able to sustain itself on this level of self-delusion. That people who were desiring some form of terra firma, of rational reality, could, over the course of a long period of time, share a culture with those who did not. And we're not just even unintentionally deceived, but willfully desirous of the lie. Like Book of Revelation kind of stuff, and all who gazed upon the beast marveled at it. That kind of stuff. Okay? I mean, this is the stuff of like 700 Club, Pat Robertson, 2 a.m. End Times videos. Okay? I mean, it's this level of delusion. But the desire for my narrative to be affirmed is so strong, I prefer the lie. And I don't know how this works out long term, man.
We're vital.
And I say this as a guy who is launching 3 kids into the adult world, and one of them's married, and we're having grandbabies. And so, I mean, I'm getting to the age where the future is all I'm thinking about all of the time now, okay, as a dad and a grandpa and a husband, you know? But I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing what I know how to do and grind and, you know, keep it as real as I can in those roles and duties. But when I look at this in a macro sense collectively as a society, I just don't know how this is a sustainable long-term venture in this current state. I just don't know how it happens. I don't.
It's not. The lie can't be the point and have sustainability. And it is all over the place, everywhere you look. We love our lies. We love them.
And you have to, because here's the thing, you have to come to the point. Why do you want this lie so badly? Why do you need it so badly? And I don't know how you avoid coming to the conclusion, you must hate me and what I represent so much that self-delusion is preferable to sharing, to abiding by the values I bring to the table.
Didn't I just say this on air about transgenderism a couple of days ago? Yeah, I mean, they have that sect, honestly, you believe it. But most of the people supporting them, the reason they really support them is because they hate us.
Yes.
You're absolutely right.
And that's because every time I do the math, I keep coming to that. The math also says you just must hate our God that much.
Yes.
But regardless if it's him or us, the conclusion, the end result is the same.
Exactly.
All right? Because if it's not personal to us, and it's really like what Christ says to Paul on the road to Damascus, why are you persecuting me, not my followers, right? Well, that's who we desire to submit to, right? Ultimately. So I just don't know how we live like this. You either hate me or my way of life to the point that you would still be rather wearing a mask in an airport in May of 2025, okay, than accept reality. You would rather watch a grown man just take your daughter's spot on the track team than accept reality. I don't know what to do with that at that point. I really don't know how to live with that, because it's telling me that it has no intention of living with me. And that's what Jake Tapper is saying to you right now. Back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And all of you, I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show there, as we are trying once again to charge the hill over there at YouTube. All right. Again, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, if you love the podcast version of the show, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Thank you if you have. Tens of thousands of you have, and we appreciate each and every one of those. And then if you hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. That makes sure that every time we do one of these new episodes, which is about 240 times a year, that episode falls right there in your podcast feed for you conveniently every single time. And thanks to you if you've done that too. And thanks to our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. They've got the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with thousands of different plants, over 2 million happy customers. They've got all the plants that your yard needs, from fruit trees to privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plant you're interested in, indoor or outdoor, they have you covered. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Order online, get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days. I know what you're thinking, a nursery of over 6,000 plants. How do I decide? They make it as easy. We're idiots, Amy and I are, when it comes to this stuff. They make it, every time we've gone there, they've made it as easy as you can imagine. To skim through such a voluminous catalog and find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, you can get support from their trained plant experts. They're on call to help you plan your landscape, choose the right plants, and learn how to care for them. So this spring, they've already got the best deals for your yard every day, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code DACE at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the code DACE at checkout, fastgrowingtrees.com, code DACE, because now's the perfect time to plant. Use DACE to save today. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, reminder, Daniel out sick. So pray for him. He's been battling some a throat infection here for the last few days. And we told him just take the week off and get better. All right, so no Daniel this week. So we're going to do Buy, Sell, Hold the old-fashioned way. All right, way we used to roll is it gets an entire hour concurrently on its own. We'll get through as many of these as we can. What remains, we will get to in the overtime exclusively for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Dace. Use the code DACE if you're not yet a subscriber for a discounted subscription to Blaze TV for just $8 a month. blazetv.com/Dace, code DACE. All right, so Aaron has the submissions that you guys have submitted. He has determined which of those Todd and I will decide and determine whether to buy or whether to sell. If, however, you decide to use your hold, all right, I gotta think of something like really demeaning.
Do you want me to pull this out real quick?
Sure.
I think uncontexted Dace 2.
There it is.
I cut that shirt off.
Thank you.
You're all thanking me for that.
Yes, thank you for doing that. Okay.
The new penalty for taking a hold and buy, sell, or hold is you have to go to the Iowa State Fair with Lindsey Graham and eat an ear of corn with him, Lady and the Tramp style.
That is the epitome of brutality, is what that is.
I think we can move on.
And I approve.
I think we can move on.
I think there will be no holds.
There will not be.
Indeed. All right, we're going to do a point of order. So last week, I got a call right as I got trolled by a Buckeye fan on the show, okay? And I got a text here on my phone that the granddaughter was getting rushed to the doctor, and grandma was texting me, I'm leaving work right now, driving out to Pella right now, okay? So, you know, it's everybody, we haven't had a baby in the family for a while, okay? So the baby chokes, or coughs, we think she's choking. Sniffles, we think something's seriously wrong. Everybody's at that stage, okay? And so I'm getting a flurry of these texts right as Buy, Sell, or Hold begins last week. And I mean, I'm on tilt, I'm on edge, that I'm concerned about my princess, her mama, and then our little sweetie heart, okay? Everything turned out to be okay. Serious allergies. She was just struggling to get decongested on her own. Got the help she needed at the doctor, and everything's okay. All right. But right at the time that this submission came in is when I was following these texts literally on my phone at the same time. And I was very nasty to everybody, and I apologized about that in the moment. I felt bad. But then after the show, Aaron, I called you and said, hey, next week, put this back up first so I can answer it as sincerely as I possibly can to give it a fair hearing that I did not give it before. So I thought my behavior last week, needed more than an apology. I thought that it needed a form of restitution. Okay. All right. So this is the one you've already bought. offering here, this proposal. All right, go ahead, Aaron.
So this
Let's say
is
it again.
going back to Brutus. He says, I'm a Catholic, so I think I know Todd's answer, but I'm very interested to hear the Protestant perspective. Part 1, proper church teaching and biblical interpretation suggests following the spirit of the law is just as important, if not more important, than following the letter of the law. Part 2, that means that Michigan cheated.
All right. By the way, I need to say this. This is the most clever Buckeye attempt at a troll on this I have gotten yet. So I really respect it. Now that I'm thinking more clearly, this is actually very well done. Now, you bought this, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let me just quickly summarize the situation here, since we're talking about the letter and spirit of the law. And I know 99% of the audience doesn't care because we have lives. So I'm going to expedite this as much as possible. Okay. What has occurred here is Michigan hired a guy from the U.S. Naval Academy who was good at stealing signals. That is not against any rules. They hired him to come in and stop other people from getting their signals stolen from them, but then to steal theirs. Okay. And his name was Connor Stallions. All right. There are no rules against stealing signals in the NCAA rulebook. None. Not even hinted at. So people calling it a sign stealing scandal, that's actually not what it is. What it is it's an in-person scouting scandal. Okay. And I can't remember the exact bylaw. It's like 116.3 or something like that. Okay. But there is a bylaw in the NCAA rulebook that says you are not allowed to scout upcoming opponents on the schedule. Now, the spirit of the law, Brutus, since you asked for the spirit of the law is that rule was put in place because the smaller schools did not have the money to send scouts in person. This is pre-internet. This was put in the 90s. So this is pre-internet, pre-cell phones, pre-digital technology, mass distribution, all the stuff we take for granted today. And the smaller schools just did not have the budgets to send scouts to these games like they do in the pros. And so that was the spirit of the law. You're asking for the spirit. I'm giving it to you. Okay. That's why the law was there. A few years ago, the rule was brought back up to be repealed, viewing it as largely irrelevant, and the vote to repeal it actually failed. Okay, what Connor Stallions is alleged to have done is, and there's a debate about how many games he went to. Not even all forms of in-person scouting is banned. For example, Connor Stallions sent people with cell phones to film the sidelines of Tennessee in 2022, and that was perfectly legal because they weren't on Michigan's upcoming schedule. They might have been a team that Michigan played in the playoffs, and so that's why he did that. All right, so the spirit is not even all in-person scouting is illegal, and it was done because of the cost of doing it for the smaller schools. That's the spirit. You asked for it, I gave it to you. All right, now the spirit of the law also is what Sharon Moore is alleged to have violated. He deleted all the threads of text he had from Connor Stallions. All right, I can completely see why someone would think that's wrong within the spirit of the law, given the timing in which he did it. He didn't do it until after the allegations of what Connor was doing came out. Okay. Then he did, okay, in honor of the spirit of the law, he did then give his phone up so that all those texts could be recovered. Yahoo Sports did a report on those texts and found that there was nothing in there at all that was found to have included any knowledge that Sharon Moore had, Michigan's current head coach, of what Connor Stallions was doing. What is being adjudicated is whether or not Michigan did violate the spirit of the law, of the rule when it comes to in-person scouting, or whether Connor Stallions came up with a clever loophole. That is what is currently being adjudicated. It is a clear gray area at the absolute best case scenario. I agree with you on that. So I don't have a problem at all. People think that Michigan cheated whatsoever. But, I come from an era where Gaylord Perry wore nail files on This Week in Baseball and taught kids how to, scuffle the ball. And we all applauded Captain Kirk in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan for reprogramming the Kobayashi Maru. So I'm going to call it a commendation for original thinking and sell, but I don't have a problem if given the facts I laid out. And those are the facts. Those are indisputable. Those are the facts of what is alleged to have occurred here. They're not even sure how many games. The NCAA says it was about 40. Connor claims it was less than a dozen. That all is yet to be adjudicated, but those are the actual uncontested facts of what occurred here. So if that rises to your level of cheating, I don't have a problem with that. It is absolutely working within a gray area. The intent was to find a loophole to circumvent the system. But just understand, I would assume under Catholics and Protestants both believe you have to be held to the exact same standard. Okay, so if the standard is the spirit of the law, then every time that you have been speeding, even though you can get pulled over, Brutus, you should drive over to the local police station and report yourself under the spirit of the law. You broke the law every time. Just because you didn't get caught, didn't get pulled over, and didn't get a ticket, doesn't mean you're not you haven't broken the law. You haven't been driving recklessly. You've driven over the speed limit. So this is where we get into subjective realms, and that's why I'm totally fine if someone else has a different take on a subjective realm than me. So I hope I handled that better than I did last week. Can we all move on now?
Yep. Next, we'll go to Colton O'Halloran. For now. Colton O'Halloran with the caveat that he praises God when black, brown, or white people come to believe in Jesus. His submission is this: when living in a country with a population of 65+% white people and some rural counties that are around 85% whites, pastors should not find it weird or make their congregation feel ashamed when their church is made up of mostly white people.
100% agree.
Obviously.
Bye. Again, race, as we understand it, race is not a biblical construct. It doesn't exist. That doesn't mean there aren't divisions. We're doing a study of the book of Romans, right? And when we did our introduction to Romans last March, what did I point out? This is the first diverse enclave in the history of the church.
I think some people were confused by when you say biblical construct. I think you're saying it's not a heavenly or spiritual concept,
correct,
right? That's
correct.
what you're saying.
Yes.
It's not like we don't recognize it.
The biblical worldview does not deny that there is race. It does not view it as a designation or distinction by which to separate people. It views belief systems as the distinction by which to separate people. The Jews were to live separately from Gentiles, for example. Gentiles who converted to Judaism were still given limited exposure to God's house, the temple. All right. If you were an alien or sojourner and you wanted to settle in the land of Israel, you had to convert to the religion. You were not allowed to maintain your previous belief system. Okay. The New Testament now is to take the word of God, the light of the nations originally given to the Jews, or as Paul says, the oracles of God, and to take those now to topple the rest of the belief systems in the world. That's the Great Commission. All right. And so that is the primary distinction: Jew, Gentile, sinner, saint. All right, where someone's belief system stands in relationship to their relationship to God is the biblical construct for drawing distinctions amongst people. That's what I mean by it's not a biblical construct.
I think we would do well to repeat anytime these conversations come up, to repeat what your response to Todd's clarification was.
Right. And by the way, that's exactly why human chattel slavery is sinful, okay? Because it's drawing a distinction that is not biblical. That's why Christians opposed it, as they were the abolitionists. Hey, you are drawing a distinction that should not happen. That doesn't mean there could be no distinctions or discriminations. Someone uses their belief system to act immorally upon someone else. In the biblical worldview, they're called a sinner. In our civic code, they're called a criminal. What do we do with that person? We separate them from the rest of the herd, right? From the rest of the culture, the rest of society. We separate people based on belief systems within a biblical worldview, not on the basis of the things that we are often separated by in our contemporary cultural understanding.
And there's a lot of people that have subconsciously been raised to believe, even as Christians, but the drip, drip, drip is that somehow if you have a room of 30 people and it is diverse, for whatever reason, it is objectively better than a group of people that is all one way. That's based race, creed, and you have to actually know the details of what you're talking about. But the details and the distinctions are grown-up things that would ultimately prove that is often a lie in the very soft-headed, surface-level way they just want you to say, this room is definitely better because there's women in it or black people. Maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Romans chapter 1 is full of diversity. Diversity of sinners, diversity of sins.
Right. Yes.
Diversity in and of itself is not necessarily an objective good.
Correct. Again, and those distinctions are determined by your belief system and what it says is moral or not. And even if you claim to be a Christian, what does the Lord say? Why do you call me Lord and do not do what I say? Okay. Again, your behavior is what demonstrates your belief system most of the time. I say most of the time because we're sinners. We're human beings. We still are in this mortal coil here. We did Romans 7 a few weeks ago. What a wretch am I? I do the evil I don't want to do, I do. The good I want to do, I don't, right? So we're still wrestling with our flesh. Okay. I mean, if you're a believer, like there's a clip going around of a Baptist minister, a black Baptist minister saying premarital sex is not sinful. Yes, it is. Okay. That is a case where I would doubt somebody's salvation or claim to it because they are openly propagating something that the Bible makes it very clear. And every iteration of orthodoxy has it's ever existed The disciples, the apostolic fathers, the Catholic Church, the Church of the Greek Eastern Orthodox Church, the post-Protestant Reformational, everyone agrees. While killing each other over 50 other things for all this period of time, this is something they all still managed to agree on they were not to do. When the apostles send the letter to the new Gentiles believers after the Council of Jerusalem in Acts, what does it tell them they still must do? Abstain from sexual immorality, okay? All right? Now, that's different than that pastor saying, okay, hey, if you're struggling with that, the Lord still loves you. The Lord still forgives you. The Lord still has a plan for you. Saying that is different than the Lord endorses this. That's not true, okay? And if you're at the point where you're going to out loud endorse things publicly and encourage other people to engage in things publicly, not what are you privately struggling with. Listen, Amy and I didn't almost get divorced 5 years ago because privately we were just living the most morally righteous lives you could possibly imagine and couldn't have been happier with each other. Is that typically why people get a divorce, Todd?
No.
It's because they're not doing that, right? Did I ever, during that period of time, did I ever come on the show and say, you know what, guys, I think leaving your wife really is underrated. It isn't that bad. Did I ever try to defend it?
No.
In fact, you guys had no clue what the hell was even going on until I admitted it after the matter was settled and Amy and I had been reconciled, right?
Right.
You know why? Because I was privately struggling. Because I'm a sinner. What I'm not is a heretic, which is why I didn't come onto this show and try to rationalize and justify my sin or hers and explain it away as, well, God makes special exceptions just for us. No, he doesn't. And there aren't any exceptions. That's why his son is up on that cross. There aren't any. So struggling privately, personally with things, even having a public failing because your private struggles, God lets them come to bear to finally break you of that bondage. That is not it can be, but it's not necessarily indicative of the fact that God has washed his hands of you. In many cases, it's probably indicative of the fact that he has not. For the Lord chastens those whom he loves. But that is totally different than openly endorsing things that the Word of God clearly says are bad and encouraging. You know, how does Romans 1 end? These are people that delight in creating new ways to do evil and in encouraging others to do the same.
Yes.
That Black Baptist minister was encouraging others to do the same. That's Romans 1 stuff, man.
And that's been going on for a long time. Ministers, men, women of all kinds, letting a certain form of diversity under the tent, maybe for pragmatic reasons. If I start calling them on this, I'll have no church left. I don't know. But look, the heterosexual community is the one who let all this diversity under the tent the first time. Divorce, excuses like this. And now, look where diversity is. Men and pastors won't even stand up in the face of the diversity we're being called to, in that men have to be in women's sports, men have to be in your bathroom. That's where this goes all the time.
Next, Reformed data guy says pre-mill Protestants will soon claim that Pope Leo's effort to reunite the Orthodox and Catholics makes him the Antichrist, making the New World Order religion.
Oh, I mean, that'll
sell. That's already happening.
I was just going to say that. That's exactly what I was just going to say. Okay. I mean, guys, the Pope is the whore of Babylon in the Left Behind books. All right, they're the greatest selling Christian fiction series in the history of human publishing. So, you know, that has been going on, you know, and back and forth. I will say, predominantly Protestants have been worse at it than Catholics, but again, it ain't like this is a singular thing here, okay? So, but yeah, if you were waiting, if you thought that was about to happen, that already happened. All right, that already happened. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
John says there's no amount of negative public backlash from conservatives outside the ballot box that can sway congressional Republicans to pass conservative legislation on behalf of their base. Corporatism simply pays too much, and Congress thinks voters are easily placated.
Correct. It's a sad statement, but it's true. And you have to understand, for many of these members of Congress, life does not change for them that much in majority or minority. If anything, life is better and more profitable in the minority. Because after they just got done screwing you into a minority next year, they'll turn right around the year after that. And many of the people they screwed will hand them all kinds of money and fill their coffers with promises of, we've got to stop the Democrats and save America again in 2028. Ask yourself why no one's ever tried shooting Mitch McConnell. Why'd they try shooting Donald Trump? How come no one took a shot at Mitch McConnell? How come no one took a shot at John Thune?
They don't upset that paradigm.
Exactly. They're not disruptors of that paradigm. And hey, we could absolutely argue and debate whether Trump is doing enough disruption, okay? Especially where Congress is concerned. But I kind of feel like going back to the guy who got shot in the face and saying, sir, please, your effort is woefully short and needs to be better. As opposed to looking at the other hundreds of people who are not getting shot in the face and saying, could you possibly do something by which you might be deserving of getting shot in the face once? I mean, when we sat down at dinner in D.C. and talked about the Iowa governor's race and the potential of me running, I mean, I looked right at you guys and said, listen, if I run, if I ever do this, I want to be the kind of candidate they're just going to have to decide they just have to shoot me. There's nothing left. They're just going to have to kill me. That is the highest form of flattery. Okay, highest form of flattery in my worldview. There was nothing left. We could do nothing left. There was nothing left we could do. Okay, we just had to kill him. I mean, that's the highest form of flattery in my worldview. But most of the people you're electing don't have that worldview. The highest form of flattery is the form of grift, and this is why, going back to what we've talked about a couple of times recently, I'm not hard on Trump about not leaning harder into pressuring Congress because I'm not entirely sure that he could. I mean, let's look at my own governor's race right now. Randy Feenstra would be the worst possible person as a member of Congress that we could realistically nominate. And he's made it very publicly known he hates Donald Trump. But I can understand why Susie Wiles and I don't know that this is happening. This is hypothetical. But I could see where Susie Wiles and some of the political people in the White House are saying to Trump, hey, man, we've got a 3-seat majority. We need this guy right now. Don't say anything. Let him skate. Because here's the thing. If Trump directly goes at Randy Feenstra to the point that he renders him a moot point, let me tell you what the likes of Randy Feenstra will do. Because the people backing Randy Feenstra are the people trying to take farmland away for people for a pipeline for corporate America. They reward their own. Randy will just retire from Congress. Take a nice big fat check making more money than you and I could ever possibly imagine working for these exact same corporate interests. How do you leverage that guy? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the inverse of Trump where they can't pressure him because he's already a billionaire. It's the opposite. How much can he really pressure them when if they don't even have to leave D.C. even. They can just stay there, do all the same haunts. They can hit it with all the same, side pieces. They don't have to even leave D.C. Just enjoy the spoils of being a kept person here by the swamp. Now, where I do think criticism of Trump is warranted is he does still have a lot of poll in primaries against these guys. But that also begs the question of what I just mentioned as well. He does need their votes to some degree for something to get anything done. So let's just say, is there something like, I think there's like 80 members of this Main Street caucus that Randy Feinstra's in. Is that right? Because I think it's like 3 times more people than are in the Freedom Caucus, roughly around that, right? So let's say it's 80. Let's say just 5 of them got together and said, hey, we got sweetheart landing deals, man. We got golden parachutes when we get out of here. We're going to hold firm. We're not giving in on anything. We're going to do exactly what our corporatist pimps want us to do. And if Trump and the White House lean in on us too much, we'll just retire. And who knows how long it'll take to fill our seats with runoff elections and special elections and everything else. Just throw this thing into chaos. Most of our colleagues will be fine with it because they don't want to vote for Trump's crazy crap either. And we just gave them an excuse, right? We gave them, am I not making the bile rise in your throat as I'm explaining what is a very plausible scenario? We're unevenly yoked. And let me say something that is the same thing I said in the first hour, but in this context will not be nearly as popular. We have also denied this reality for many years on the right. I don't rail against it as much as I used to because now it is what it is. And I'm no longer, I tried. I got involved in every primary I could for years and got absolutely crushed. That's how Daniel and I first got to get to know each other and become friends. We were fighting in these primaries around the country together, man. And we got crushed in almost all of them. Okay? But, we're self-deluded on our side too. I mean, if you're frustrated by Congress, ask yourself, when was the last congressional primary I voted in? And how many people did I take with me to the polls? We've got our own self-delusion going on here. Better than any Democrat. I mean, that's not a standard. Better than asbestos. I don't have plumbing in my house. The toilet's clogged. The AC's broke. And the furnace is out. Better than black mold. Meanwhile, your kids are looking at you shivering or sweating. And they've got bacterial infections from the lack of indoor sanitation. But you looked at them and said, better than black mold, better than asbestos, better than lead paint. That's not a standard. It's moronic. But we've been playing that for decades, so here we are. We have also boxed ourselves in. We want the delusion too. We have not actively participated in this process at critical mass levels. We are therefore surrounded by quislings of our own making. And I just don't talk about it that much anymore because I prefer to live, and I was going to drive me to an early grave, and I want to see more than one grandkid. And it's very clear I don't have any power to really change the dynamic after years of trying. And so I've just more heavily invested myself into biblical worldview stuff where I think I can more constructively make a difference and not have a 180 over 130 blood pressure when I go home at night. Okay? That's why we don't do it that much anymore. But that dynamic still exists. We put ourselves here. We're deluded too. We just don't want to hear that.
You often say God's economy, maybe I'm not saying this correctly, but God's economy operates on the principle of what? Headship?
Headship, yep.
And so headship, when you are the head of something, most often, and I'm not saying lecturing, but I mean teaching. You are constantly teaching. Not in a lecture way, like in the classroom, but you're teaching people. I'm the head of my home. If it's really stressful and something sends me over the edge, one of the kids tips me over the edge maybe, and I fly off the handle. What am I teaching? I'm teaching that I can be impatient. I can be rough. I can be brash. Or if somebody screws up in one of those moments and instead I take a patient track with that, I'm also teaching them that I can be patient as well and that I'm not just totally a man filled with rage. In an employee-employer relationship, I failed to produce a montage 5 days in a row for stupid reasons, and Steve just says, that's okay, man. No worries. Steve is teaching me that I can just run roughshod over him.
Yep.
In this relationship, with you and your elected representatives, who's the head of that relationship?
We're supposed to be.
We're supposed to be. So what have we been teaching our employees?
That they can wait us out, get reelected, keep the pension gravy train going. 92% minimum, 92% of incumbents get reelected every election cycle for the last 4 decades.
Aaron, you might say we're way too comfortable.
No.
You might.
No.
I mean, we came off in the 22 election coming off the 2 years, the closest to domestic hell we've had in this country, all right, since Pearl Harbor. And that was the most pro-incumbent midterm election that we had in something like 50 years. At that point, what do? That's on you, man. That's on you at that point. It's on you. The people are the problem.
There's another data point out there about the number of men 20 to 30 something. It was shared by our friend over in Virginia there about how many of them are still living at home kind of thing. I mean, we don't have citizens. We don't have men. We don't have a church.
We do have more buy, seller, hold submissions, though, and we'll get to those when we come back. So this past Sunday, I got a nice note from my wife yesterday, or Monday, saying, man, that might have been the best Mother's Day we've ever had. And we had 3 generations of moms there. And we were blessed to have 3 generations of moms there because another generation of mom, over 70 years ago, made the choice to adopt. And that's Amy's mom. And then my mom made the choice 50 years ago not to murder her baby, but to take her chances of being a mom at the ripe old age of 15 instead. And that's my mom. These are decisions that have generational consequences, perhaps even eternal consequences. And That's why, for moments like that, that's why we're aligned with our friends over at Preborn. And last year alone, Preborn helped save 70,000, almost 70,000 babies from their mamas. And I would argue also almost saved 70,000 mamas as well, in a different context. And you guys played a huge role in that. This partnership between the Blaze and Preborn has been so generous. And, you know, for as little as $28, you can fund an ultrasound that may convict the conscience of a mom who is considering murdering her child and getting her to reconsider and to choose life for her and her baby, right? So if you want to be a part of that, and then their ongoing ministry too, they don't just abandon these moms after they choose life. They're there for them after the fact too. All of the things they do for these moms, all of it is free of cost, but none of it is actually free. And that's where you and I come in. You can make a tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. Go make a tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve.
Okay, moving on. We go to Tyler Small. Doge should be applied to American churches. Something similar.
Are we talking about just looking at finances or justifications?
Yes, that's kind of what I took that as.
I'm going to sell until you more specify the, well, no, you know what? I am going to buy. I don't think the church is worth that. It should be worth that kind of deference because it's not a business. It's not. But I would argue most of them have, too many of them, have treated themselves as such. So then we should respond at that point accordingly. And I'm totally all for it then. I'll buy. On reconsideration, I'll buy.
I'm going to sell. They aren't businesses. And fundamentally, that's not the problem. The pastor at my church, who's now retired, once said he talked about while a lot of churches, if they have a special reason, they will do a second collection. He says, I'll tell you a second reason why we might need money, but I won't do a second collection because I believe in your proven track record of generosity. And I'm going to tell you what we need and why we need it, and then we're going to pass it once, and I leave it up to you. And I believe based on the testimony of why you come here to Mass, the message we provide in the name of Jesus Christ, I think that's what you need, and you don't need to be manipulated. This is a spiritual problem. We don't fundamentally have a business problem in the church. We just have a church that just won't be the church.
I'm sorry, I just saw this Babylon Bee headline. Forgive me. Incredible. This man is 100% ideologically consistent, and he also doesn't have any friends. Oh my gosh, that's good. Okay.
Uncontexted Deace 2 is double dipping.
Oh boy.
This is David French's drag queen persona. I'm a blessing.
I'm a blessing.
Yeah.
That is well done. I mean, it's heinous. Don't get me wrong. All right. It is, it's deplorable to look at, but it is very well done because of those things. So yes. Blessing of liberty, I think there. In fact, yes. I think that's what I'm a blessing is referring to. Yeah.
Bye.
Next, we go to Traffic Email Escalation, who says the WASPs were not defeated or are not defeated. They have merely relocated their Hall of Doom.
Listen, man, these things followed me literally all over America last year. All over America last year. So I'm buying on this. I'm buying. And I hate you for saying that.
Sell.
Matthias Nilsson says we should let in all the white South African refugees that wish to come here because they are actually facing real institutional racism and persecution.
Oh, no, I wouldn't let them all in. I'd vet every single one of them like I would anybody else. I still want to vet these people. To me, that is not enough to justify giving you status in my country.
Correct.
Right. You could be facing persecution because you are a terrible person and deserve it, right? So, I mean, I would vet them just the same, okay? As we are not permitted to vet everybody else, but should be.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Going and moving on, China Compass says, I think we agreed to negotiate with China just a bit too soon. If the tariffs were truly hitting the commies harder than us, not sure why we couldn't have let them sweat at least long enough for one fully tariffed ship to cross the Pacific. Let them get desperate. Buy, sell, or hold, agreed to negotiate with China too soon.
So... which isn't, again, theoretically, this is about playing poker, knowing when to flinch, all right? And Donald Trump he just went over to Saudi Arabia. He wants to do groovy deals. Can't we all be happy? He's really not trying to break anybody, all right? And plus we just got done a couple ago talking about the relationship with why nothing happens amongst Republicans. It's not just the people in office, it's the people who, the voters, and how far they're willing to go, what they're willing to do, the excuses they make themselves. I don't know. A lot of the people were only going to be so patient with this as well. There's a lot of factors involved with this. Maybe a little longer. I don't know. But I don't think this is definitely, you're playing the... Ultimately, remember, this should be all about real, not about Donald Trump or Republicans even, about real human lives, and are they objectively better or worse? And as far as you can pull all the levers of power.
I agree with what you said, but I also don't have a problem with his premise. But I think there's insurance against your premise, okay? And that insurance is that this is only a 90-day deal. I mean, I think there would be more concern about what you're saying if we had this decoupling rhetoric and everything else going on, and then 2 weeks later there's like a 5-year most favored nation status agreement extension. This is a 90-day deal, okay? And so that to me is kind of insurance against what you're concerned about, because I don't think that's a terrible concern at all, okay? Although I also kind of wonder, I don't know how much more we were going to get from China. There's a lot more we can get from them on the IP front and everything else, but on the tariff front, getting it down to 10%, I don't know how much lower you're going to get waiting on that for another, period of few months, but the insurance against your concern is that this is a tryout, basically. It's a temporary measure to see how things go. And then if this is going to be formalized longer than that after 90 days, there will be more negotiation at that point.
All of us have got we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Even in like close hand things. Remember in Schindler's List?
Wow, you've really sold out, Todd. Where are your principles?
Oh, I know. I'm going to get that. But when Schindler's List, he's sitting there and he's down on himself. He's down on himself that he couldn't save more. And Ben Kingsley's character says this. He shows him the list and said, "This list is life." I mean, honestly, the pro-life movement at some time has had this problem with, well, if I can't save all the babies, I'm not going to save any of the babies. That's pretty stupid and immoral too. Now, most people don't even get to that. The biggest problem we have is I'm not even really going to try and I'm just going to pay lip service. I get that. I get that.
Yep.
But guys, do as much good as you can, and then also understand, as Steve said at the top of this show, the real world you live in. For now, in this moment, maybe I've gotten all I can get.
I think that we have a misunderstanding of what incrementalism means because we've been lied to about what it means for decades.
Absolutely.
And so it's now become a negative, okay? And because we have been told losing slower is incrementalism, okay? Giving Democrats 65 or 70% of what they want instead of just an outright color revolution, that's incrementalism, right? That's the Team GOP way. And we lied to each other about this. And so I think the term in and of itself has lost a lot of integrity with people. But now we've gone so far the other way that the ability to see things strategically or to think in categories or to understand nuances and distinctions is largely lost, frankly, right now on too many of God's people, I think.
Next, we go to Brian Snyder, who says Trump is showing that we can have a better economy and be a world leader if we have the right leadership in this country. I shouldn't have to say that, and many people don't want to hear that. However, it needs to be said or else we will forget.
Again, going back to what Aaron said about headship. So leadership matters.
Yes.
Right? I've made this point before, and we've talked about this. If tomorrow the feds show up, Dan Bongino shows up at my house with Kash Patel to confiscate all my, devices because they found out I'm doing kiddie porn, you guys didn't do it, right?
Okay.
But what happens to your jobs?
Gone.
They're gone. Because who's the head here?
You.
Me. Right? Again, you can have the most faithful. You think is it Gateway Church down in there in Dallas that Robert Morris was the pastor of? I'm sure it's just doing lickety split, man. Since their pastor's over in Oklahoma trying to avoid going to prison for the rest of his life. I bet that thing's just growing leaps and bounds. People just can't wait to go back there. Okay. Headship matters. Leadership is headship are synonymous with one another.
Ask C3 Ministries right now.
Correct. That's the Josh Bice story.
Buse,
I didn't really, is it Buse? Okay. I really didn't know who the guy was until this whole story, but, so yes, leadership absolutely matters. Worldview is destiny. I say that a lot. Leadership is destiny too. Yes.
You are aware the new Superman trailer is out, correct?
I am on purpose. I've completely stayed away.
Can we watch it and get your real-time reaction in overtime? Or would you rather not?
Okay, since it's in the overtime, yes. The reason I didn't want to do it on the show, because it came out like 45 minutes ago.
Yep.
But the reason I didn't want to do it on the show is in case I was very disappointed, I didn't want it to distract me from doing the rest of the show.
So
but
there's
since
a
it's
tease.
the last thing we're going to do, sure, we can do that.
So there's a tease. In addition to bonus buy, sell, or hold in the overtime, we will have Steve's live reaction to trailer 2, or is this the first?
This is actually the first full trailer. We've only gotten a teaser. Yeah.
This one is not so much of a submission as it is something funny. Noah Ray says, Aaron is quoted at least once a week by Tim Pool in one of his shows. Any of you being a guest on one of his programs would be awesome. Well, number one, you were a guest.
I was a guest on his show in February of 23.
Yeah, number one, you were a guest a few years ago.
They treated me fine.
And number two, Noah says, holy heckers, guys, I just realized Aaron McIntyre and Oron McIntyre are two different people. Now I'm questioning my entire life.
That has actually happened quite a bit. And it gets really confusing when we have Oron come on to do the day script. Then it gets really confusing. I have to stress my phonetic pronouncement so one of you guys, each of you knows who I'm actually talking to.
But that makes it weirder that he just realized it because unless you're very new to our show, we've had Oron on multiple occasions. So it seemed that would have sorted it out, but I don't know.
So that wasn't a submission. I just thought it was funny. Matt says a little league team could beat the Colorado Rockies.
I mean,
are they bad this year?
It's bad. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they'll win as few games as the White Sox did last year. They set the record. But, I mean, it does look like comedy of errors kind of stuff, man. It looks really bad, really bad. But a little league team could not beat the Colorado Rockies. A college baseball team couldn't beat the Colorado Rockies, so I will sell.
Oh.
Daniel Garrett says, next time Steve and Todd start going back and forth on Connor Stallions, Aaron should have some Duel of the Fates music playing in the background.
I love that because I love the freaking Duel of the Fates music. So any excuse we have to inject that, I'm in favor of. We'll probably get a copyright strike, though, if we do that, right? Is that what will happen?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, this next one is very spicy. Todd, did you have something else to say?
I'm just selling. We're not going to cross the streams like that. No, there needs to be clown car music when we debate this. That's what there needs to be.
Benny Hill? Benny Hill? Yakety Sax is good too. Yeah.
All right, Jim Stalker has this. Top 10 things more useful than congressional Republicans. Number 10, Dan Crenshaw's binoculars.
I just saw number 1. God.
You can't do number 1.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't. Come on.
Number 9, a concrete parachute.
Ooh, that's brutal.
Number 8, Anne Frank's
Dan Crenshaw's binoculars reference, by the way, is a high level poll, brother. That's a high level poll.
Number 7, driving lessons from Ted Kennedy.
Anne Frank's drum kit. Come on, man. We can't do that either.
6, a colorblind interior decorator. See, I had the same reaction, but I'm like, taken as a whole, this is so bad. I feel like I'm violating the dude code by punking out by not taking this. Like I'm wussing out by not taking this.
Driving lessons from Ted Kennedy is a nice poll too, by the way.
Number 5, a knitted condom. 4, ejection seats on a helicopter.
Oh boy. Oh gosh.
Dick Levine's
tampons is cash money, homie. All right, that is retire right off into the sunset. Mic drop. You can't do better than that. Dick Levine's tampons. In fact, that's maybe the greatest name for a garage band I've ever heard. Dick Levine's tampons. All right, if your kid comes to you and says, "Dad, I want to be in a band," and you're doubting it, you're like, that's not a real job, son. I don't think you got the talent to do it. What's it called? But he calls it Dick Levine's tampons. You immediately affirm that life decision. Absolutely. And you do everything you can to get them on a stage to be heard. That needs to be platformed. You bet. Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Levine's tampons. Yeah. That's the greatest band name ever. But number one cannot happen on this list. Number one.
Jay Barrand 44 has day show on location ideas. Number one, Todd's draft party at the NFL draft.
Can you, pay-per-view. Just print the money.
Actually, no.
Print the money.
Todd's signing day party for National Signing Day.
Yes.
The guys are literally just dropping schools because they didn't pay them enough.
It's Festivus.
Todd's signing day party is actually what
the
you want.
The real-life Festivus airing of grievances. It would be glorious.
Number two, Steve's survival guide in a backwoods Alaska.
That's going to be a very, very short broadcast. That's good. There's not much there. There's not much there
at all.
Just going to tell you up front, not much there.
Number three, Aaron's vegan smoking class at a jam-packed subway station. I don't get the subway station part.
Neither do I.
Is it just because there's people?
Maybe because very congested with people.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. All right.
I'll
sell it.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, we made it through an entire list. When have we ever done that? Like on the regular show.
Yeah, it has been a spell.
Wow. Well, no, there is some more you said, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's it for this segment.
Right,
so we've got a few more.
Make it through.
We've got three more submissions, a few more submissions, I should say, and your live reaction to trailer number one.
All right.
Are you going to have the camera on his face?
I'll do double box.
No,
we can't do that. Come on, man.
I don't think.
None of us are virgins. We can't do that. We can't.
Oh
that's
no,
cringy.
we have to do that.
No, I'm going home. No, I'm not going to be a part of such things.
I'll have the camera on your face too, Todd.
Yes.
How do you like them apples?
That's going to be my normal face of disgust.
Romans 8:28.